Hold on. March Madness 2020 is canceled? It's over? I mean, like, it's like totally done? That concept just blows my mind. Like, I'm not really truly grasping that March Madness is over. Listen, on this journey, I'm gonna break down just how serious the coronavirus is, why the coronavirus shut down the NCAA tournament, but stick around to the end, because I'm gonna break down who would have won the NCAA tournament had it actually played out. Now, of course, we can't go by what's going to happen, so what I'm gonna do is look into the past. I'm gonna break down stats, actual facts, and look at some trends of past champions to give us the best glimpse as to who would have won March Madness 2020. Let's get into it.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Welcome back to Journey of a Ballaholic, the best talk show for basketball addicts. I'm your host, General Hannibal X. Now, if you're new to the channel, on this show, you're going to be getting my passionate and unfiltered opinion on the hottest NBA and college basketball topics. I know that the seasons have been postponed, tournaments have been canceled, but stick around to this channel here because every Monday and Friday, you're going to get new episodes that'll be uploaded at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, before we jump into this video, let's go ahead with the comment of the day. Had the March Madness 2020 tournament actually played out, who do you think would have won? Go into the comment section below and let me know who would have won the NCAA tournament for 2020. So, unless you've been hiding under a rock, you've heard about how coronavirus is truly just taking over the entire world, right? But I think we gotta kind of put things into perspective. The coronavirus, what really separates this from like the common flu, is that you gotta think about it like this. The common flu, it has like a fatality rate of 0.1%, right? So there's people all year, every year, they get the common flu. And last year, I think a couple years ago, they had a fatality rate of 60,000 people that actually died from the flu. And what scientists are saying about the coronavirus, which makes it such a serious virus, and one of the main reasons why the NCAA tournament has shut down, is because the coronavirus has the ability to be 10 times up to 20 times more fatal than the common flu. So think about those stats for a second. If you had 60,000 people that died 2 years ago from just the regular flu, 60,000, and now you're talking about a virus that has 10 times at minimum the fatality rate, you're looking at 600,000 people that they're expecting to potentially die from this. Now, granted, the numbers are extremely low right now, we get that, but the reality is you have to protect the people, the fans. You have to protect the student athletes. So the NCAA, though late, they made the right decision to shut this thing down across the board, and all sports have been shut down. And I think when you think about the coronavirus, and one of the things about it is that it's not necessarily like an airborne thing. It's kind of like a people-to-people contact, where, as like, for instance, with the flu, that could be passed typically from one person to another person. With the coronavirus, they're expecting it to be able to, from one person to be able to pass it up to 2 to 3 people. So that's giving it where it's much more contagious. It's a much higher fatality rate. So that's why people are taking this much more serious than even the flu, even though we don't have the numbers that match the flu, if that kind of makes sense. You gotta keep in mind this. In order to be able to document how many people have the coronavirus, you actually have to test them, and they're short on coronavirus tests. That's one of the biggest problems right now. So, not to get too into the science part of it, because you came here for basketball, and that's what this channel is going to be about. It's going to be about basketball nonstop until we get some more basketball. And I'm going to do an NBA video coming up, so definitely make sure that you go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit the like button on this if you like the content so far. Make sure you share this as well. But the reason I think that the NCAA had to shut this thing down is because even though you're trying to put all of these players into one arena, and even if they were going to get rid of the fans, which was a smart idea to do, you still have players, you're gonna have refs, you're gonna have media, you're gonna have, you know, well, even if it's only 200 people from 20,000, let's say, that's still a lot of people in one concentrated area. So we gotta all start to be very serious and take this very serious, because that's what it is. Now, just today, the NCAA, they announced they actually were kind of weighing the possibility of releasing their March Madness bracket, even though they're not going to have the tournament. I think that would kind of be cool just to see how they would have lined things up so that, you know, all of us can be able to go out there and still do our brackets just to see, you know, how things would have worked out. But we'll never really know. And that's the unfortunate part when you've got so many seniors, so many just players. I mean, a guy like Trey Jones, for instance, who came back last year for a chance to try to go win a championship this year. You look at a guy or a team like Dayton, who's having one of the best seasons of their career. You look at Florida State. Florida State's another one, where Leonard Hamilton had definitely probably his best coaching season of his career, one of his best teams, wins the ACC regular season, but doesn't even get a chance to compete with this team in the ACC tournament or the NCAA tournament. So you got to feel bad for these kids, but at the end of the day, it's the NCAA's job to save these kids from themselves. And it's, they've taken a lot of flack about not really, valuing the student athlete and trying to just be a money grab, but this was the right decision. So as we start to move forward, we also have to look at that the NCAA also announced that they were considering a possible 16-team tournament. Now think about that. They were going to shrink this thing from 68 teams down to just 16 teams, right? Well, now that makes things a little bit more interesting. And I see why they were going to do that, to try to just kind of minimize the amount of people, amount of fans, so forth and so on. But unfortunately, they're not going to even have that. But it got me to thinking, who would have won the March Madness 2020 NCAA tournament had they had it? So I did some research, and one of the things that I love to do is bring actual facts, stats, the real deal. Listen, everybody's entitled to their own opinion, everybody. But when your opinion is backed by stats and actual facts, it makes your opinion just a little bit more credible. So Ken Pom, right? Ken Pom has what's called the Ken Pom rankings. And I've studied the Ken Pom rankings for the last 18 years. They came out in 2002. And I've been studying them every single year, looking for trends, charting what do common NCAA championship teams have in common. And I found one common theme that every single NCAA champion has always had in the last 18 years of the Ken Pom rankings. Number one, they've been a top 15 overall in the Ken Pom rankings. So what we're going to do is we're going to shrink this thing down to just the top 15 teams that were left on the Ken Pom rankings as it last stood with the last release. Number one at that list was Kansas. And you can go all the way down this list and you get to Florida State, who was the 15th team on that list. But not only were every one of the champions a top 15 overall seed, they also ranked top 40 in offense and top 18 in defense. See, that's where we start to really chop this list down from the 300 schools that there are to the 68 teams that were going to be in the tournament, to chopping it down to just the top 15, which we know every team that's ever won a championship was a top 15 team in the Ken Pom rankings. Now we can start crunching that thing down even more. And when you crunch it down and factor in offense and defensive rating, once again, top 40 offense and top 18 defense. Now you only get down to 6 teams. Now we get down to the cream of the crop. And those remaining squads are Kansas, you've got Baylor, Duke, San Diego State, Michigan State, and Florida State. That's it. Kansas, Baylor, Duke, San Diego State, Michigan State, and Florida State are the only teams in the entire country that rank top 15 overall in Ken Pom rankings, top 40 in offense, and top 18 in defense. Let's dig a little deeper though. Now, each of the last 20 champions, that's the last 2 decades, all of those champions ranked in the top 12 of the AP ranking when the Week 6 standings came out. I'm gonna say that again. Each of the last 20 NCAA champions ranked top 12 in the AP rankings when the Week 6 rankings came out. Well, that chops that list of 5 all the way down to just 3. You're left with Kansas, Baylor, and Duke. These teams right here all had time at the number 1 seed at some point in time this year. They've been some of the favorites to win it, kind of fluctuating as we've been kind of an interesting NCAA season where there really is no great team. There has been truly no great team all season. But these 3 teams have kind of fluctuated between being the best for probably the most of the time throughout the season. And I don't think that's any accident, especially when you start looking at these rankings and the trends based on what history showed us. Kansas, Baylor, and Duke, in my opinion, they were locks for the Final Four. Like in my bracket, I I had them as locks for the Final Four. Now, I did have a sleeper team that wasn't on this list, but I definitely want to shout them out because they were my preseason Final Four sleeper, and they had a kind of up and down season, but I think that they could have shocked some people, especially with their senior guard, Miles Powell. That's Seton Hall. I really love what Seton Hall was doing this season, and unfortunately, like I say, we'll never really know if they could have been that Cinderella story, but we're going to stick with these top three because these top three check out as far as being in the top 15 overall, top 40 offense, top 18 defense, being top 12 through week 6 of the AP rankings, right? They also were top 20 in offense and defense. But let's go a little bit further. Now, out of these three teams, Duke, Kansas, and Baylor, the last 4 NCAA champions, they were the number 1 seed, were a number 1 seed the previous year. I'll say that again. The last 4 NCAA champions were a number 1 seed the previous Final Four. Go back and think about it. Also, 12 of the last 18 champions, like I said, the KenPom ranking has been out for about 18 years. 12 of the last 18 have had a higher offensive ranking than defensive ranking. So, as we know, defense wins championships. You got to be elite defensively. Like top 15, top 18 for sure. And all 3 of these teams have that. Offensively, all 3 of these teams are elite. But to me, the only team that matches these last 2 stats I gave you of being a number 1 seed last year, having their offense rank higher than their defense, out of these 3 teams, the only one that checks that box is the Duke Blue Devils. Now, I'm a Duke fan, so you may say I'm biased, I'm a homer. Well, think about this. Kansas and Baylor have played a couple times this year. And the most recent game that they played, Kansas beat Baylor. Duke played Kansas once this year, which is actually game 1 of the season, when neither one of these teams were as good as they were toward the end of the season. I get that. But Duke did win that game. So if I'm going with my national champion, obviously I'm biased, but the stats back up that Duke had the resume, had the history to match up with past champions for at least the last 2 decades. When you've got the legendary coach like Coach K, when you've got an elite guard like Trey Jones, who won ACC Player of the Year, ACC Defensive Player of the Year, was elite on both ends. His last game against his rival North Carolina had 21 points and 11 assists. We saw what he did the first time against North Carolina. Granted that, North Carolina was some hot garbage this year, but a rivalry game is a rivalry game. And Duke was coming off a 2-game win streak. Kansas was playing some really good ball. Baylor was playing some good ball. But at the end of the day, I think we would have had a Duke-Kansas a Duke-Kansas national championship game. And I think that the matchups where you got Azubuike, Vernon Carey. Vernon Carey was freshman of the year in the ACC. And I think Trey Jones and Vernon Carey would have been national finalists for the Wooden Award. I mean, I wouldn't have been surprised if one of those 2 would have won it, to be honest with you. Dotson from Kansas, you love them. Now, DeSouza, he had the suspension, and I don't know necessarily when he would have been back. Maybe he would have been back in time for a late Final Four run, but as of right now, where things ended, I think that this Duke team would have beat that Kansas team. As we saw them in the game 1 of the season, they beat them with DeSouza. So, at the end of the day, let me know who you think would have won the championship. But before you go, make sure that you click this card that I've got for you. I got a playlist here of college basketball stuff that I think you'll love. You'll be able to see some of my preseason predictions, my Final Four predictions. Also, take a look at this video that I've got up top as well. Until next time, peace.